INEC today held a consultative meeting with heads of security agencies in preparations for coming election. But the question is the commission ready? And the 183 kidnapped Cardinal worshippers are back home. We'll be telling you some of the revelations they brought back home. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I am Sean Wakimbale right here in Abuja. I'm bringing you some of your biggest stories as far as today is concerned in politics, governance, and policy making. So stick around with me for the next 60 minutes or so. I will be driving you through your world of politics. So let's begin from the appeal court, where what would be a very, very major judgment was delivered. The Court of Appeal, which has dismissed fresh attempts by the Central Bank of Nigeria and Ahmadu Bello University to halt the payment of 2.5 billion naira judgment debt to 110 former ABU staff unlawfully sacked in 1996. The court was ordering the CBN to immediately release the funds without further delay. In two unanimous judgments, a three-member panel led by Justice Okonabang upheld the Ganeshi order issued in 2022, faulted the CBN's objections, including claims requiring Attorney General consent and warned of heavy sanctions should the Apex Bank continue to frustrate the payment. The appellate court described the appeals as unmeritorious, scolded the CBN for wasting public funds to delay compliance, and held that the workers were entitled to enforce the judgment against funds deposited with the bank since 2018. In addition to the affirming the 22.5 billion payment, the court awarded 5 million naira each against the CBN and ABU as cost in favor of the workers. Take a listen to one of the lawyers after today's judgment at the Court of Appeal.
have been summarized to be oppressive, to be wasteful of government funds, and to be inhumanity of man to man. And in the light of this, we give all the glory to God that this matter has come to an end. We just advise that people in positions of authority should always exercise restraint and concern for the human beings they deal with. As staff, as colleagues, we must always be mindful. We must not be oppressive. We must consider that this fellow is a human being like me, and I can also fall in the same situation. These are the things I will say in summary, because you need to know the pains, the agony, the sufferings that these people have gone through.
From looking at the pains and agonies of what some workers have gone through, it was joy in Kaduna when 183 worshippers abducted from the Karming Wali community in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna said regained their freedom. And that's not the news. They were received 18 days after they were kidnapped by bandits during a church service on the 18th of June at the government house in Kaduna. The victims were received by the governor himself, the Sakashim Ibrahim house in Kaduna, and receiving the worshippers alongside heads of security agencies and top Kaduna state government officials and community leaders. This is what how the governor described the occasion. He says, it is a day of joy for the state. However, we do not know the details as to how they were rescued. But the good news is that they're back home.
The State government have worked tremendously with the security agencies to ensure that we protect our state, protect our citizens' lives and properties. The numbers that were adopted at the beginning were 183. 11 were the first people that came back, and we took them straight to the hospital. I'm happy to announce that all of them have been certified medically fit.
All right. You ask yourself, what are the promises Bola Tinubu made to Nigerians and the APC made in terms of healthcare delivery in this country? Over 80%, we understand, of the drugs and the medication that you consume whenever you feel sick or something are not produced locally in Nigeria. They said they want to ensure that that will change. But how far have they been able to go? We'll be finding out and unraveling some of these for you. But also, we will be dissecting for you the Senate conversation on the amendment of the Electoral Act. This time around, we will be talking to someone who's been in INEC for several years, who knows so much about what the 2023 elections, the glitch, and all the issues about it. And those are some of the conversations we'll be having tonight on the program. Stick around with me. Let's have you now with your political roundup stories.
Ahead of the FCT Council area elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC has announced that it will conduct a mock accreditation exercise in selected polling units across the Federal Capital Territory on Saturday, 7th of February 2026, as part of preparations for the FCT Area Council poll scheduled for 21st of February 2026. In a statement signed by the FCT Resident Electoral Commissioner, Mr. Aminu Idris, the mock accreditation will take place in 289 polling units across the 6 area councils: Abaji, Abuja Municipal Area Council, AMAC, Buari, Gwagwalada, Kuje, and Kwali. According to him, the exercise is designed to test the functionality of the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, assess INEC's operational readiness, and further strengthen public confidence in the electoral process ahead of the council polls. The Social Democratic Party, SDP, has criticized the Senate leadership over what it described as resistance to a clear legal mandate for real-time electronic transmission of election results, warning that any reversal of electoral reforms could erode public confidence ahead of the 2027 general elections. The SDP National Publicity Secretary, Rufus Ayeniga, stated this in a statement amid ongoing consideration of the amendments of the Electoral Act by the 10th Senate. According to the party, Nigerians had clearly expressed their preference for stronger electoral safeguards during the 2025 public hearings conducted by the Senate, particularly in response to credibility concerns arising from the 2023 general elections. The Rivers State chapter of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says they are working tirelessly to make sure that persons with disability are carried along in the continuous voter registration and upcoming elections in the state. This was made known in Port Harcourt by the Commission's Administrative Secretary while receiving a delegation of a joint National Association of Persons with Disabilities who were on a protest march to the Commission to demand better inclusion for their members. To Kogi State, where the Progressive Stakeholders Forum has declared their support for the re-election of President Bola Tinubu. Addressing the forum in Lokoja, the Kogi State capital, the chairman of the forum, Mr. Idris Wada, says the re-election of President Tinubu is critical to the advancement of Nigeria as a nation. He stressed the need for members of the forum to be innovative to ensure the seamless re-election of President Bola Tinubu in 2027.
All right, and there you have it, your political roundup stories. Well, let's tell you that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is asking security agencies to scale up efforts to curb vote selling and buying in Nigeria elections. The chairman of the commission, Joash Amupito, is given that charge at a meeting of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security earlier today in Abuja. The meeting is part of ongoing preparations for the area council elections in the FCT and the forthcoming June governorship election in Ekiti State. All right, then. I will be bringing you that sound bite when it's going to be time for us to talk about elections, because we're not done about the Electoral Act Amendment B and the controversies around it. And those who are saying, do we need the electronic transmission of results in real time as pertaining to the Section 60 of the Electoral Act Amendment of 2022? And I'm bringing to you tonight very experienced former INEC National Commissioner. But stick around with me on that conversation. But let's be probing and asking the Bola Tinubu government on what they promise in terms of healthcare delivery in this country. What have they done? And what should Nigerians be expecting based on the burden of healthcare delivery in Nigeria? So there is an initiative, of course, which is catering to the provision and coordination of health value chain in Nigeria. So tonight on the program, the push to expand citizens and private investment in the pharmaceutical and the health sector comes under our focus tonight on unlocking healthcare value chains, boost local manufacturing, and reduce dependence on import. And central to this drive is a presidential initiative for unlocking healthcare value chain, PVAC, established to attract billions of dollars in investment, create skilled jobs, strengthen health security, and improve access to affordable quality care for Nigerians. And joining us tonight on the program is Dr. Abdul Mokhtar. He's the national coordinator of the presidential coordination on initiative for unlocking the healthcare value chain. It's called PVAC. Thanks so much, Dr. Mokhtar, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Sean. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. There is a big gap. Yeah. We consume a lot of medications in this country that we don't produce. Yeah. Jobs, innovation, manufacturing, there's that gap there. But you have been called into this special presidential initiative. Yeah. And part of it is that this government says it's looking at millions of jobs in that sector. But what has been the journey so far? What do we know?
Yeah. So thank you again for having me. The initiative was set up about 2 years ago, precisely to reduce the burden of imports for local manufactured products, to reduce outbound medical tourism, to create all the jobs that you've said. Nigeria is the only country in the world that has at least 100 million people that does not produce a majority, that is 50% of its healthcare commodities and products. We saw what happened during COVID. We're running helter-skelter to get even the basic commodities, masks, gloves, and so on and so forth. So the essence of this initiative is to really reverse that, to be able to produce locally. To be clear, no country in the world produces 100% of what they consume. But the reason why we're doing this, there are 3 reasons why we're doing this. Number one, to have a minimum security of supply, so that if there are pandemics like COVID or at least essential medication, the WHO has a list of about 30 essential medicines and commodities. We don't produce most of those. So the idea is for health security to be able to produce some of those. Number two, to be able to also produce things that are relevant to us, malaria products, products for diseases that are only prevalent to us, that only us can produce or should be producing. But also there is an economic rationale for all of this. This is medical industrialization, what we're trying to do, because if you look at healthcare spending in this country, in many African countries, it's about 2 to 3% of GDP. In the US, which is the highest, about 16%. In most OECD countries, about 10%. So just growing the pharmaceutical sector, the healthcare manufacturing sector, actually is good for the diversification that we've been talking about in this country for decades. So there is an economic, there's a public health rationale, there's a security, minimal security of supply. What we've been able to do since President Bola Tinubu established this is a number of things. We've been doing a systemic approach to this. When you look at manufacturing of products across all sectors, but also more so healthcare sector, there are 6 major barriers, challenges. Number one is the issue of policies. So policies, regulations, making sure you have the right policies, the regulations are right for business, you have the right laws in place. Second is access to finance, not just money, but the right kind of money, the right kind of instruments, for with long tenor, but also different, have some flexibility for the different kind of players in the industry. The third challenge is access to market. So you can produce all you want, but you need to be able to sell. You need to be able to have a good procurement system. The fourth is the human capital development. You need the people to run these industries. So that's a big challenge. Number 5, infrastructure. You need the power, you need the water systems, you need the transportation systems to be able to do that. And then finally, you need to have a research and development base. So what we've been able to do under this initiative is to systematically find solutions to all of this. So let me give you examples. In the area of policy, right, Mr. President has graciously signed an executive order last year. This is an executive order that has actually been shaping the industry. It provides for zero duty, zero VAT for importing raw materials and equipment. We've been doing policies in this country without thinking through. You want to stimulate local manufacturing, but if somebody brings their machinery or the raw material to do that local manufacturing, you charge them high taxation, custom duties and all of that. So Mr. President signed an executive order that has provided zero duty, zero VAT for all these products. Number 2, he's also signed an order, part of that order, for us to shape the market. Under that arrangement, we've actually established a group purchasing organization that will pool procurement and so on and so forth. What are the results? Just these 2 examples that I've given you. On the executive order, our analysis has shown that by just implementing that zero duty, zero VAT input into the manufacturing, you reduce the cost by about 12%. We are not trying to block imports into Nigeria, but what we're trying to do is to make our own manufacturers competitive so that they can compete. Because if you block imports without making your producers or manufacturers competitive, then what you're doing is to make the cost of production, the cost to go through.
Because I'm going to jump in quickly.
Yeah.
What we have seen in the past is that there are foreign investment into this sector.
Yeah.
And what has happened to local manufacturing in that sector is that it is naturally killed.
Yeah.
Incentives are being given to foreign investment, but local interests are being frustrated.
Yeah.
What is the security for local investment? Because there existing local investors who, for the issues of electricity, for issues of preference of consumers of foreign medications over locally manufactured ones, have frustrated them out of the market and even in fact pricing.
Yeah. So absolutely right. Our focus are the local manufacturers. And so what we've been doing is giving them the incentive that they need.
What kind of incentive?
So I mentioned the executive order that has reduced their cost.
Taxation.
You look at taxation, zero VAT, zero duty. You look at the returns from the Nigerian Stock Exchange last year, 2025. Of the top 10 performers, actually 4 pharmaceutical companies. I talked to a pharmaceutical company in Lagos that told me that their profitability has increased by 10%. What that means for ordinary Nigerian, average Nigerian, is that number 1, these are incentivized to produce, and therefore there will be jobs for them. But more importantly, the cost of drugs will actually go down. So this is a typical example when I talk about the executive order. For the local manufacturers, Mr. President recently did a Nigeria First policy for all products. But even before he did it for all products, the pharmaceutical sector, we've actually gotten him to do that, which is if you produce the kind of products that we want, we will buy from you. So through the procurement systems of government, and you can look at the budget, there's provision. We are buying from local producers, through different programs that we're doing. But also, we're shaping the market. We're creating we have actually created a pool procurement mechanism called Medipool that will aggregate volumes, so prices will be cheaper. You can negotiate with the manufacturers. You can do all of that, and basically be able to.
My worry is in doing all of these fantastic ideas on how to stimulate the market, the sector that is almost moribund. Our pharmaceutical industries, you can count on top of your fingers how many pharmaceutical companies and the capacity of what it can produce for a population of over 200 million people. And you have a very thriving piracy. And those who will say, you take medications in Nigeria, it's as if you are just swallowing chalk. Nothing is happening to you. It doesn't have effect. You buy medication elsewhere, and you take it, you see the effectiveness. What are you doing to piracy?
So
because you go into some markets, inside those markets, you open some shops, they're producing these medications.
And that's why this is a systemic approach. You know, you have NAFDAC. NAFDAC is doing a very good job. Actually, if you look at the record in the last few years, they are doing a good job. And what I say to people when we talk about local manufacturing does not and should not mean lower quality products. Nigerians deserve the best quality products. But when you have, so NAFDAC is doing its job to regulate that. But even the market shaping that we're doing, if you're pulling the procurement, you know who you're buying from. In Nigeria, there are about 200 manufacturers now, and to come back to a point, the number has actually been going down. Before we started, there were only about 100 manufacturers in Nigeria. Are they enough? No, they are not. We need more. But in the last 2 years, based on what we're doing, based on the policies of this government, the number of pharmaceutical companies has actually, pharmaceutical and other healthcare products.
But have you been able to close the gap of the 80% of our medication and health products being produced abroad?
Yeah, we have. And
by the way, recent figures?
By the way, it's not 80% now. It's actually between 60 to 70%.
So that's been reduced in the last 2 years?
Yeah, in the last 2 years. But also, that just you know that 80% or 60 to 70% is an aggregate number. There are products where we're actually not even producing up to like 5%. So test kits, for example, we only produce maybe about 2% since we started. But I tell you, again, look at the results. Last year, we commissioned 2 major companies that are doing test kits. One, Codex in Ogun State is producing 147 million test kits for HIV, TB, malaria, all across this country. They are also planning, they are getting qualified by the WHO to move into the West Africa region. Right here in Abuja, there's a company that is actually in partnership with Naseni. It's called Tremont. It's a biotech company. Right here in Idu, in Abuja, they have actually begun production, about 20 different test kits that they're producing.
Dr. Muta, sorry, apologies to butt in quickly. Yeah. And when you mention incentives that have been provided, funding gap is a major issue. Yeah. And I imagine that this government, maybe for some reason, should allocate some money in a pool. Yeah. That those who are interested in that, there's a huge gap. Yeah. If we still have about 50 to 60% of our medicine and healthcare products that are being produced out of Nigeria, that means it's a huge market. And Nigeria is a huge market. Yeah. Are there funding, special funding, whether from the CBN, of the Bank of Industry, or any other banks that can allow people to go into this as a business, of course, and that was because the market is there?
Yeah, so I mentioned access to finance as one of the key challenges, and we have a systemic approach to it. What we've been doing so far, and multiple things. Number one, we've been mobilizing resources from the development finance institutions that will provide long-term funding. So 2 examples, for example, with the European Investment Bank, we've mobilized about €1 billion. So this is a pot of money called Human Development Accelerator that the EIB has in partnership with the EU and the Gates Foundation. This is money that is available. It's not money that is already given to us to invest, but this is money that is available. Afrexim Bank, one of the first things that we did when we started is to sign an MOU between Afrexim Bank and the president was there, Dr. Pache, the honorable coordinator minister. They signed an agreement for a $1 billion pool of funds. Our guarantee and our commitment to Nigerian manufacturers and all healthcare products is, look, if you have a good business, right, you have a feasible, bankable business, the money should not be a problem. And we are working with our local institutions. You mentioned Bank of Industry. Right now, we actually have $75 million for about 10 projects that is already been signed by the Afrexim Bank. We are working with CBN to swap it into Naira so that we can bring it in. This will happen hopefully in the next couple of weeks to go into about 10 different projects. So yes, money is coming. Just this week, in a related sector, you know, the NSIA signed an agreement with International Finance Corporation to bring in about $25.4 million to set up oncology centers across. So we're looking at all these pools of money. There is no one point of money that is right. The CBN has a role to play.
A lot of people, trust me, Dr. Mukata, don't trust this government. Yeah. And it's natural for government not to be trusted. Yeah. Government globally don't get trusted. Yeah. And Tinubu government will not be the first not to be trusted. Yeah. You've said all of these wonderful ideas. Yeah. But can you give us an example of what in specific and in particular products that we will say we have sufficiency and that has happened in the last 2 years? Do we have an example, vivid one?
There are many. So I can give you a few.
Give us one that Nigerians can easily live. Because
I told
you speak beautifully.
Yeah.
And you are easy to...
This is not speech. This is reality. This
Actuality.
Okay, so look, I told
have?
you, test kits. We have now 2 companies that are producing. One is about 147 million test kits in Lagos, in Ogun State. One is producing about 20 different tests right here. So you can get your test kits right here in Nigeria. That's number one. We have a company, one of the major pharmaceutical companies, that is actually about to complete a project to produce API, which is active pharmaceutical ingredient, which is actually the base for pharmaceutical production. Actually, 2 companies like that. That's number 2. Number 3, which is also very impactful, bed nets. As simple as it is, Nigeria... Mosquito nets shown Nigeria accounts for about 27% of the global burden for malaria and 31% of all the deaths of malaria in Nigeria. About 200,000 people, 185,000 thereabouts in Nigeria die every year from malaria. When I was 3 years old, I had cerebral malaria. I was given up for dead. This is over 50 years ago. We still are not able to produce the basic tools. Mosquito net is one of the most simplest ways to prevent malaria. You know where we have been getting them from? From China, from Vietnam. We went with the Honorable Coordinating Minister, First Professor Pate, who's leading this initiative on behalf of the President, to all the different companies. In December, we commissioned a project in Ogun State with a local company called Harvestfield that will be producing 10 million bed nets. And this is not just any bed net. This is what is called dual-active, long-lasting insecticide nets. Dual-active means typically, previously, you just have one active chemical that prevents the attack by mosquitoes. Mosquitoes became wiser, so now you need 2. So it's difficult for them to adapt and to be able to resist. In April, we're going to produce. This is not with anybody. This is with Vestergaard. This is the world's largest producer. Last year, they produced 1 billion bed nets. This is not talking. It's happening in April.
Producing it right
here in Nigeria.
By April this year.
April this year. The equipment is already there.
What about the malaria vaccines?
The malaria vaccines are being tested. There are clinical trials that are going on. We have a very special way also to look at vaccines. So vaccines is also one of the things that we're trying to. But you know, vaccines are also complex. So we're also trying to be realistic. Right. So when you say trust, what we try to do is to, we began the journey. We're building the ecosystem to be able to do this for the long term, for sustainable. But good things are happening.
Dr. Mukhtar, the government says local manufacturing will reduce drug prices and improve access. Yet manufacturers argue that energy costs, logistics, and interest rates could actually make locally produced drugs more expensive. How do you reconcile that contradiction, and when should Nigerians expect to see real price relief?
So, to be fair, to be honest, price relief is already happening. If you look at what the prices a year ago, or 2 years ago, I think prices are already going down, thanks to the executive order that Mr. President has signed. Because I go around, I spend a little time in Abuja.
Which of the medication? People talk about BP medication, and these are very popular medications, all malaria medications, BP medication, diabetes medication. They are popular medications that people use in popular conditions that people use in managing this condition. Can you give an example of the price?
Most of them prices have gone down by maybe about 10 to 15%. Again, due to the implication of the putting the executive order and some of the policies we're putting in place. You know, sometimes these things take time. When you do this, when you're trying to build an ecosystem, and that's one of the problems, you know, when you want to do something that is sustainable, that's why we've not been successful in this country. What this government is doing is laying the foundation for sustainability. We are building an ecosystem. So we are looking at all the things that I've talked to you about. You know, why is the human capital to run these factories? You talk about power and energy. Yes, power and energy are issues, but you know, the industry, we are looking at things. One of the ways we're trying to address that is to actually build parks, medical parks. When you build a park, you can have captive power solutions. The cost of power will reduce. And there are places where parks are built. Anambra State, Governor Soludo is building a park. And you know what we've done? We've gone out. We brought one of the world's largest producers of some of the medicines, family planning medicines, called Bayer, brought a local partner called Chromedics. We signed an agreement. They are going to actually localize in that industrial zone. Akwa Ibom is setting up an industrial zone. Kaduna State, you know, has an industrial zone for medicines and pharmaceuticals. You know, so all of those solutions that we're bringing together will actually address some of these infrastructure issues. Again, is it going to happen tomorrow? No. We're not deceiving people. I think the trust that you talk about with government is we're telling the truth. We're saying this is a journey, but we are on the right track.
Dr. Mukhtar, just before you go, what would you say is the biggest win since this initiative started 2 years ago?
It's a difficult question because honestly, there are so many things that we've done. But I mentioned some of the things that we're doing. But let me tell you something that we've done just this week, yesterday actually. We launched an academy called Empower Academy Nigeria, which is a training academy. You know what happens is, people go to school, they study pharmacy, industrial engineering. You bring them, you take them to a pharmaceutical company, they cannot operate, they don't even know how to operate the machines. And medical knowledge keeps changing, keeps getting new every few months. So what we've done is to say, you know what, let's produce for the industry. Right now, people just keep moving from one company to the other based on slight salary increases. So we said, let's create a finishing school where we'll be training people that will serve the industry. I think for me, the human capital part of it, the fact that we're doing this, creating, again, part of the ecosystem, because you can talk about manufacturing all you want if you don't have the right people to do it. And one thing that I will say, since you asked me that question, I'm talking about the human capital, for Nigerians, for the next, under the academy, the manufacturing academy, Empower Manufacturing Academy that we've set up, we have decided that we'll offer 40 different courses free of charge to all eligible Nigerians over the next 2 years. So this is going to be a game changer, because what will happen is, you can study whatever you want to study, but you need that finishing touch to get practical knowledge, industry-ready knowledge that you'll be able to apply into manufacturing to provide the human capital that you need.
Dr. Abdul Mokhtar, who is the president and the national coordinator of the Presidential Initiative in Unlocking Health Care Value Chain. Thank you so much indeed for your time. I appreciate it. I wish you the very best, you and your team, for what you're doing.
Thank you,
Thanks so much indeed.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We'll take a break, everyone, but when we come back, the very, very controversial issue about the Electoral Act Amendment Bill and some of the issues that have been raised, the gray area. We will be speaking to someone who has worked in INEC for several years, being a national commissioner in INEC. He'll be speaking with us, and the possibility and all of the argument about the transmission of results and transfer of results. Does it make sense? And what is the best way to go? Learn from 2023. We'll be right back, everyone. The Senate amendment of the Electoral Act is continuing to generate sharp debate in the land, particularly over whether lawmakers approved or rejected the electronic transmission of election results. There are now conflicting claims on the Senate floor, questions over legislative procedure, and concerns about the implications for electoral credibility have now put the process under intense public scrutiny. Well, beyond the controversy of the procedures, let's look at the meat of the matter and the technicalities of it. And in all of the back and forth between the senators and those who did right and those who did wrong, whether or not it was the right thing to do or whether they agreed or not. But let's look as Nigerians, what exactly do we want? What is right for us? Tonight, I'm being joined to unpack what the law actually says, what the Senate passed, and what it could mean for future election. Is a former INEC National Commissioner, Dr. Mustapha Lekki. Thank you so much indeed for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, sir. A medical practitioner who became an election expert. But tonight, you are going to be dissecting for us and trying to help us find medication for our problem, because we need to have learned from 2023. If not, then we are a nation that fails to learn from its past mistake is doomed. Of course, everybody knows that Dr. Lekki is the Galadima of Auchi's Sacred Kingdom.
Correct.
Thank you so much for the honor of appearing tonight. Now, you've worked several years in INEC.
Sure.
You know the problems of INEC, which a lot of us know that logistics is one of the problems.
Number one.
But this issue of transmission, glitches and glitches. 2023 was a turning point, which a lot of people thought, going forward in our elections, we need to correct some things. You've heard the debate about transmission. What do you think was the biggest lesson out of 2023 elections?
I think, thank you for having me, Sheila. I think the biggest lesson, surprisingly for most people, hearing me say this, was the lack of communication and forthrightness on the part of INEC about what was going on, because things were happening. The IREV, the uploading of results into the IREV was not happening the way that it was promised to happen, was designed to happen. So people were particularly in the dark. And it was taking INEC such a long time, I think even much longer than I was expected, even not true after the election results had been declared, to actually explain to the public what happened, why that delay, and why those glitches, and what caused it, and what remedial actions were being taken. There was too much of a lag in silence.
So naturally, there's nothing wrong in having a technical problem.
No.
But you thought that there was a big communication gap. I mean, with the benefit of hindsight, what do you think the commission could have done right there? Because it's a crisis moment, and we've seen crisis happen right on election day. In 2011, if you remember, I remember just entering back into the country. I traveled for an international coverage of an event in Addis Ababa, and just coming into the country. And as soon as we landed, we understand that under Professor Atairu Jega, that elections are postponed because of technical issues. And it happened again in 2015. Yes. And we had another problem in 2019. Yes. And a similar thing happened in 2020, logistic problem. Yes. But what do you think, with the benefit of hindsight, INEC could have done better?
At that time, I think INEC should have called the principal stakeholders and addressed the matter promptly and factually. Because the facts were there. We knew what was going on. But there was no point to hide by. Just call the principal stakeholder, the political parties representative, the CSOs, the media, and even development partners who are critical stakeholders in the election process in Nigeria, and just tell them exactly what is going on. This was offensive. It was real, and there was no need to be defensive and by keeping quiet. I think that was just a disaster. It was not a good way to manage a crisis.
So from when it happened and to the point where Professor Mahmoud Yakubu now came out and wanted to start announcement, and the likes of Dino Melaye now came and said, you have to stop the process because we don't believe in what has happened. You need to tell us what has happened to the IRA because it's not working. You thought that there was a lag.
There was clearly a lag, and it took too long for that to have been fixed. And
did that damage the reputation of that commission?
It was a reputational issue because INEC had overpromised at that time that this was going to be live, and that was not necessary. Even the law didn't say it should be automatic transmission of results from the polling unit. So there was no need to say that. I thought it was an overpromise that could not be delivered.
But some of us thought it was just natural because we tested it right here on China television. We were in Osun State. We used the IRV importer to transmit election results. Like, we made some dramatic improvement and development in our election reporting. That year, when people are able, while waiting for results, they were watching on television, like you will see in America. China television made that landmark achievement in our election reportage. We did that right here in Nigeria, where Nigerians can able to see local government by local government as results were happening. Yes. But that's why we thought that, going forward, it will be better. Osun, Ekiti, and we did it also in Ekiti. But general elections,
off-season elections are not the same as general elections. They have their own different characteristics. And also knowing that this being a general election in 2023, anything possible could have happened. And there was possibly cyber attack, which could not be ruled out, and the resilience and robustness of the staff who are managing the technology back end. All those things. And we can see even in the US, there were issues of cyber attack in their elections. We talk about Nigeria with resilience and IT backbone, which can be subject to any kind of malfunctioning. So the reason was just not there.
The American election is quite interesting. Don't forget, I have a fellowship in coverage of American elections. And I had studied the American elections. And to a large extent, yes, there are machines that are being used. But America will still print the ballot paper off the machine to tell you that there is no trust in technology to a large extent, especially coming out of that election between Trump and Hillary Clinton, about the role of Russia in that election. Don't forget about Cambridge Analytica and the Jonathan election, and the fact that technology was used also for some level of political manipulation in Nigeria. But with that experience and background, Dr. Lekki, transmission of result has been debated right now in section 60 of the Electoral Act 2022. What do you think technically is best for our country at this time?
I actually believe that the position taken by the Senate, which is what we read, commonly, I've not had a press conference given by the Senate president or so, but what we hear is that they are leaving intact what is currently provided for in the Electoral Act 2022. They're not changing it to reflect automatic transmission of results from the polling unit. In other words, they are leaving it intact, which means the technological response of INEC by developing the IREF and the BVAS is technology that they are sort of sanctioning going forward. They're not changing that. And I think it doesn't really make sense to me that we should be talking about instantaneous transmission of result live as it is happening from the polling unit. It doesn't make sense because we don't do electronic voting anywhere. So we have to think about those things. Those things must go together. It's not electronic voting. When you are doing electronic voting, then it can be instantaneous, right? So if we're not doing that, people are still coming with paper ballot to put in the machine, to put on the ballot both, and then you have to count them for everybody to see one by one and separate them according to the political party, and then at the end declare the polling unit that who won before you now fill out the form EC8A, which is the most important document that needs to be filled and signed by all the agents representing the parties. That is the only way you can send it.
So the argument is baseless.
The argument is baseless.
You think we don't need a transmission, electronic transmission, real time?
Real time.
People is for transparency, Dr.
Transparency. Are we voting electronically?
People want to be monitoring from wherever they are.
Are we doing electronic voting? If we do electronic voting, then it is instant, it's automatic. Are we doing electronic voting? We're very far away from it. I don't know if we ever really get to electronic voting. I don't want to preempt, future occurrences. Given that I was in the committee that I chair with, is it the people in charge of
ISIS?
No, not ISIS. The ISIS, the people with who control the MNOs. The major network, NCC.
NCC, yeah.
Okay, I was co-chairing a committee that looked at how to ensure that we have adequate coverage of all the polling units in Nigeria. About 120,000 or so polling units across Nigeria. And when we did the mapping, we found significant gaps in terms of, MNOs coverage. And NCC was asking INEC to foot the bill to provide the mass. I mean, INEC doesn't have the money to foot the bill to provide mass in every place where there were gaps.
So for electronic transmission, we are not ready.
We are not ready.
We are not technically ready. We don't have. But how do we? What Nigerians are looking for is that we don't want anybody to rig the elections. That's why Nigerians want to be monitoring, to be seeing it real now. Koro want to be watching it as they are doing it. Let us be seeing it at home. Because where your feet cannot reach, at least your electronic transmission.
But is that really true with the issue of cyber attack?
So you're afraid of cyber attack?
But it is real. Are you not afraid of it? Has it not happened? Does it happen in even more mature democracies, compared to Nigeria? What are we talking about?
But what is more dangerous? The cyber thieves of our election and the cyber attack that we could fight against.
You can fight against cyber attack with the kind of technology we have. There
are those who are into ethical hacking who can help you fortify your domain and your election infrastructure, and those who are political election thieves who are ready to, they are stealing destinies and disrupting lives by stealing it. Who should we be more afraid of?
I think we are just not ready. And we have to take the cue from even more mature democracies, what they are doing. If what is happening there, where they are more sophisticated, have the resources, and have people who are, what you call ethical hacking, who can support them, and these things are still happening. So you can imagine our own fledgling democracy. I'm not making a case for us, but I'm not saying that we need to be a bit more prudent and more realistic, and let us bite what we can, what we can chew. And I think what we have right now, the government, I keep saying the government, the Senate, the National Assembly has provided for, is adequate. And INEC is responding in a very ingenious and very practical way. The development of IREF is fantastic. And the fact that we're using BIVA is also a very fantastic tool, instrument that are doing well. So what we need to do, I think, in terms of this transmission of results, is to rely on what is currently available and make sure it works perfectly. And it can work perfectly. Now, the point is, if you have, at the end of the polling unit, at the end of the result being declared the polling unit, we should have a time saying the results are cut off by 3 p.m. I don't know whether it's the law or by subsidiary regulation by INEC, that by 6 p.m., all results from the polling unit must be 90%, 100% on the IREF portal. So that one we can monitor. So the extent to which they are 98%, as you calibrate the time going forward, will tell you the efficiency issue. And I will continue to work on the glitches.
Legally speaking,
100%, 3 hours after the closure of polls.
Dr. Lekki, and I'm glad that you're an election expert by the virtue of your service at INEC. And for someone also who has covered the election for several years and monitored elections, and I'm speaking categorically, technically now, on the nature of our elections. To be honest with you, and legally speaking, if you analyze it properly, transmission of the election result is less powerful than the physicality of election result documentation. That election result, the physical one, is still seen under the law as more superior than any form. Now, it looks to me, legally speaking, that the transmission of result is like the law wanted us to be watching television of the result being put there. And it has, that's its own purpose. And I'll give an example, sir. There was a year, and this many years back, I think this was the first election preceding the first term of Rauf Aregbesola in Osun elections. There's a popular roundabout at the Okefia. This roundabout in Osogbo had I think it was the ACN or APC at the time, I can't remember, the platform upon which Rauf Aregbesola was contesting. And they had results they were collating their own results in their own situation room.
Right.
And guess what they were doing? They were transmitting that result in a very large LED screen.
Right.
In the middle, guess what? There was no light most of the night. And people were singing, they brought DJ, people were singing and dancing at that roundabout, and people were monitoring the result. Right. For one thing, in fact, we journalists now, because there was law, they were collecting results at the local government and transporting them to Osogbo, the headquarters of the state. And that became the point where all of us stayed and started covering to see, because there was nothing to cover again because election results were being collated at the time. So people were monitoring and they were seeing how the APC then were collating their result. Right. Tell me how easy would be anybody to go and manipulate the result, because people are publicly looking at the result. If you dare change the result from what people have seen publicly, it will have caused a problem. Absolutely. And that's the kind of transparency that Nigerians wanted. Yes. That nobody under the shadow of darkness, under any disguise, will be able to go inside one room and change the result. Right. When that caution is there, and I think that was section 60 sub 3 as being amended, is supposed to serve transparency and accountability.
Yeah, but there are many ways to get to that point, you know, and I think the present system can do that. If you have, anybody can be a coalition officer, you can be one in your own house, because if the IRF portal is being uploaded from EC8A, which is the official result sheet from a polling unit, and they are being uploaded, and you are following them, that is why it is important for a political party to have agents at a polling unit. You cannot not have agent polling and you come and dispute what happened at the polling unit. That is just madness, you know, clearly. So for 120,000 polling units across the country, you must have an agent there who signs and collects a copy. And in fact, I don't know if we can say that no copy of the from ACAT should be uploaded unless it is signed by political party agents. Although if we do that, somebody can now hold you to ransom, they won't sign it and then you're not able to upload it. But the point is that if we just follow the current system and it is uploaded in good time, say after the polls have closed, within 3 hours, within several hours, I think that can be done by subsidiary, you know, regulation by INEC. Within such they can make that promise and make it work. But even if it's not 100%, we keep working on it, you know, pushing the margin until we get 100%. So if we have that going to the IRF portal, you and I can be returning officer in our own place. A diligent and a good party that has a collation center, which I think one of the parties had, and they can even project which is what is done even in the US. CNN will announce the results. You know, I think you can have polling agents, you know, and collect the results. And Channel can announce, you know, well, you can do without necessarily making official.
Yes.
But the thing is that you can collect it as you are collating it, because you are the portal. because it is there, it's official, it has been authenticated and signed. You just pull it and tabulate. So you will know whether or not to go and be dancing before the softly declared.
Why is
I think a party did that, but some parties didn't have that, resilience, and they didn't have that kind of provision. They go and make noise about it's rigged, and because of the delay, so there'll be manipulation and so on.
Why is it difficult for INEC to be able to come forward and tell us what the glitch was? Because there's a lot of money that was spent.
Well, two issues there on the money that was spent. I don't know why. I keep seeing, we've had this discussion in the past, and I keep coming back to it, that communication was a disaster. And they should have. I don't think that, they have really, I think they patched it over time, but it was delayed. And they say that justice delayed is justice denied. So the same thing, in this case. They're talking about money, which is a big issue, I think, I know. Election in Nigeria costs so much money, but mostly the money comes from the ballot papers. We don't need this kind of ballot paper that we do. And most of the ballot paper, more than half of them are shredded and burnt. So you can imagine if about 40 billion naira has been spent on ballot papers
and shredded and
burnt at a cost too. Something is wrong. And we have other places in the world where political parties distribute the ballot papers to people on the street. So, and the heavens did not fall.
In India,
so we can certainly do better in that area.
There was a device that was made, albeit a locally Indian-produced device that you have to, as soon as you press on that device, the particle, it registers you, and it also gives you some level of receipt, like your POS machine.
Yes.
And people thought that is cheaper to manage, and also a lot of the time we cannot even print our own ballot papers in Nigeria.
No,
we have to print them abroad. If there is any little legal issue that demands change, we are in trouble.
Yes.
And this has happened a few times.
Yeah, it has.
And you look at it. If there are lessons and big ones to learn from the attitude of, if you are not satisfied, go to court, to issues of glitch, INEC is not working, and the fact that people have to go into an election, fraudulently win an election, and stay in office, and hoping to use their office to manipulate the judicial process. And people say, how do you think that this election, because we are still in the process of amending it, all hope is not lost. What would you be saying to the National Assembly now to be able to ensure that they get the trust of the Nigerian people?
Well, I still say what I said when I started my opening comments. The provision with regards to the transmission of results from the polling unit, relying on the Form EC8A, which is the most appropriate form to use for declaring the result at the polling units, it should remain. And I believe that it appears, I don't know what are the other amendment issues that the Senate is considering, but I appear that is the most topical issue, and I think it's overflowed. And I think that the position the Senate is to be taking by leaving it the way it is currently, is the way to go. And like I said, if we are not doing I think it's a complementarity when you are doing electronic voting as well as electronic transmission of results. If you are not, and that is not what we are doing, and we are not anywhere near doing electronic voting, I think that issue should be rested, and we should move on to other issues in which we can make more mileage.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mustapha Lekki, a former National Commissioner of INEC. Always a pleasure having you. It's the Galadima of the Auchi Sacred Kingdom. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you. Before we go, that the APC has announced the reconstitution of its Central Coordination Committee for the 2026 National Convention. The reshuffled committee now have an expanded member from 73 to 90 members. The former Katsina governor and ex-speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Aminu Bello Masari, has been appointed as the chair of the committee. We also can tell you that Mr. Adams Oshiomhole has gone to see the president, and he said the discussion at the villa was about issues relating to the First Lady being recognized in the United States. He did not, of course, speak about the viral video of which they said now is AI, of him being seen massaging the foot of a woman in a private jet. But these are issues that have caused a lot of social media conversation. But that's how we leave it on the program tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Akimale. God bless Nigeria.